Warning, if you have not read the first series of Percy Jackson, do not watch this video. There's a ton of spoilers. When did Percy and Annabeth fall for each other in Percy Jackson and the Olympians? We all know that the cute couple finally ends up together in the final book with the underwater kiss, but what led up to this invigorating closure? I'm going to be analyzing the previous books and determining the origin and development of these feelings. For each book, I will discuss the thoughts from Percy's perspective and naturally Annabeth's perspective as well, derived from their countless interactions, and some of them being pretty darn cute. Before I delve into the video, I need to make a few points. This book is an I book, meaning it strictly uses the first person. Therefore, Annabeth's perspective is limited, and I have to make assumptions through her actions. On the other hand, Percy's internal dialogue directly shows his thoughts, easily providing me with his opinion toward Annabeth. Already in the first book, The Lightning Thief, we see something happening between these two lovebirds, albeit slightly skewed to one side. During Percy's recovery after fighting the Minotaur, Annabeth watches over him as he sleeps in the big house and tends to his wounds. How do we know that she watches over him? When he finally wakes up, she monotonely says, "You drool when you sleep," subverting him from his inquiry about him being the one that she discussed with Chiron while he was half conscious. The endearing nature of this playful response is clearly evident. It's a lighthearted tease. Teasing is a very common flirting technique, especially among children, and nobody purposefully teases someone else without some underlying interest or curiosity in them. Additionally, if you get past the unsettling behavior, Annabeth was also watching over Percy as he slept, most likely checking him out in a safe way. If that doesn't scream, "I have a tiny crush on you," I don't know what else does. Later on, when Chiron informs Percy that he may choose another volunteer for his quest, Chiron explains another has already volunteered if he is willing to accept her. Percy, knowing it's Annabeth, playfully chides that whoever volunteers themselves is stupid, and Annabeth appears behind Chiron after taking off her invisibility cap. She calls him a seaweed brain, playing off the natural rivalry between Poseidon and Athena. Now in this part specifically, Rick Riordan chooses to not capitalize the name calling as a way to emphasize it as an insult, but later on in the book it develops to a true nickname after becoming capitalized. Not only does this tie back into the teasing I mentioned earlier, but nicknames are without a doubt always used toward people you have a strong emotional connection to, and the transition from insult to endearing nickname profoundly highlights this growing relationship. Another scene I would like to mention is when Percy and Annabeth need to retrieve Ares' shield. The only problem is, they have to go through the thrill ride of love. Annabeth visibly shows discomfort and embarrassment at the idea due to its romantic implications. While one can argue it may appear as a childlike reaction to love, we already deduced Annabeth holds some feelings toward Percy, and the concept of entering the tunnel forces her to directly come to terms with it, only further solidifying her growing connection to him. Now we get to Percy's perspective. He's very clearly oblivious to any hints given by Annabeth, but this is just the Percy we all know and love. He should know that her teasing him is a clear sign of interest, but he also shouldn't be directly blamed for this lack of awareness either. In his previous schooling, he was bullied immensely by people like Nancy, with his ADHD and dyslexia definitely not helping, and he was even a victim to his stepfather Gabe's rude comments at home as well. This environment naturally breeds a low self-esteem, so it makes sense that Percy would not be able to understand Annabeth's subtle hints, or instead would shake it off as mere friendly interactions. Furthermore, his lack of friends, besides Grover, before attending Camp Half-Blood places more value on every friendship he manages to create, so his thoughts may stray from romantic interest entirely, and instead he focuses more on keeping regular relationships. We all know the risks involved in confiding your romantic feelings toward a friend. Despite his obliviousness toward her, we should note that during the previously mentioned interaction with him waking up in the big house, he describes her as a pretty girl with blonde hair curled like a princess. While he recognizes her beauty and shows some physical attraction, his thoughts and actions, or lack thereof, suggest no further romantic development toward Annabeth currently. My general consensus for the first book is that Annabeth certainly begins to develop a crush on Percy Jackson, with her gentle teasing of him throughout the book. However, Percy remains ignorant of her intentions due to low self-esteem derived from his school bullies. While he may have some physical attraction toward her, I believe it to be more of a recognition of beauty, and not a set-in-stone crush yet. In the second book, we finally begin to see some development of Percy's feelings toward Annabeth as well. Over the summer, after their quest, Percy receives a photo of Annabeth that she emails him, which he later prints out and puts in his school binder. I don't know about you, but if I'm placing a picture of someone in my school binder, the intent is to look at it, and to do it a lot too for that matter. Percy definitely shows more interest and admiration toward Annabeth in this book, likely springing from her absence as he recognizes how much he misses her over the summer. Nevertheless, Percy argues that the picture instead keeps him remembering about his other life at Camp Half-Blood, and to ensure it wasn't a dream, not directly pointing out his desire to admire her. However, this more shows Percy's inability to reconcile his feelings toward Annabeth, which is a pretty normal reaction for his age. On the topic of admiration, during the quest for the Golden Fleece, Percy and Annabeth land on Circe's island, and Percy finds himself a jaw-dropping spectacle of Annabeth. The island attendants provide Annabeth with a complete makeover, with a new hairstyle, clothes, and makeup. Meanwhile, Percy was busy being turned into a guinea pig by Circe. When Annabeth barges into the room with his transformed self and Circe, Percy comments that if he wasn't a guinea pig, he would have been tongue-tied from looking at her. Instead of merely recognizing her beauty in the first book, we now see a physical reaction coming from Percy, highlighting more of his romantic desires and crush for her. Later in the quest, Annabeth and Percy face the Sirens, creatures that lure sailors with their songs, and Annabeth pleads for Percy to fasten her down so she may hear the wisdom people claim they sing. Percy reluctantly agrees, however things take a turn for the worst after she escapes and jumps into the water to reach them. Percy follows her and grabs onto her foot and sees what the Sirens show her. He sees a remodeled world, possibly architectured by Annabeth herself, with Luke and her sitting on a picnic blanket. The absence of Percy and inclusion of Luke in the vision results in jealousy and anger since, in his perspective, she values a traitor over him and still possesses feelings for him. This scene helps establish Percy's new sense of possessiveness and jealousy over Annabeth, not shown in previous instances where she visibly crushes on Luke in the first book. Anna provides more evidence to imply his feelings for her, even though he may not understand them himself yet. From Annabeth's perspective in the second book, she definitely becomes more comfortable around him, emotionally and physically. Maybe a bit too comfortable, as we learn that the shadow Percy sees in his room after waking from his dream in the beginning of the book was her peering into his room. She later reluctantly discloses this to him after dealing with the bullies in his school, who turned into fire dodgeball throwing monsters. She arrived at his school to inform him of the weakening magical barriers of the camp and to safely escort him from danger. Percy begins to further question if she looked in the room as he dressed, which she blushed to in response. Yeah, no comment on that. It seems Annabeth has a very strong inclination to stalk Percy throughout the series, undoubtedly crushing on him. Back at Circe's island, we know Percy magically transforms into a guinea pig, which Annabeth, being the goddess of Athena, cleverly finds out, and she spills Hermes' gift of multivitamins on the floor, which Percy eats, instantly healing him. After taking care of Circe, Annabeth hugs Percy, obviously distressed at the thought of him never transforming back, which shows how important he is to her. This is also their first hug of the series, but don't worry, it gets better. As we mentioned earlier, the Sirens made Annabeth envision a new world with her parents and Luke, taking advantage of her hubris that believes she can accomplish this. Percy pulls her down underwater, blocking out the singing and cutting off the vision, but forgets she can't breathe underwater like him. He creates an underwater bubble, and from the shock, Annabeth breaks down and cries on Percy's shoulder. Her ability to physically and emotionally confide in him so intimately exemplifies their flourishing relationship, albeit a friendship at this point, but contributes to more romantic feelings later on in the books. After they finish the quest and return to Camp Half-Blood, the chariot races continue after the disruption with the Stymphalian birds in the beginning of the book. Of course, Percy and Annabeth team up and end up winning the race, which leads to Annabeth kissing him on the cheek. Aww. The crowd clearly ships them and begins to cheer louder from the interaction. I mean, what is this, a dramatic irony? The crowd obviously knows they like each other and supports it. Percy's mother definitely does after him printing her photo out, and they still do nothing about it. Clueless teenagers. More specifically Percy. Annabeth is trying her best. But I digress. This kiss speaks volumes to the development of their relationship. The physical intimacy is ramping up fast, especially in this book, which foreshadows more to come. My consensus for the second book is both players are in the game now, but Percy is unaware he's playing soccer, and Annabeth keeps shooting goals into his net. In general, Percy finds himself showing his desire for Annabeth through jealousy and her absence, whereas Annabeth now expresses her feelings for him with more physical and emotionally intimate moments. Oh man, if Percy had it rough over Annabeth's absence in the summer, he had it even worse in this book. In The Titan's Curse, we see Percy's fear of losing Annabeth on steroids, conveying his strong emotional attachment to her at this point. Starting off, when they infiltrate the school to pick up the two demigods, Nico and Bianca D'Angelo, to bring them back to camp, we have the dance scene between Percy and Annabeth. He is a mess dancing with her and overthinks every little thing. His hands are sweaty and gross, or so he thinks, and he can't help but notice Annabeth is taller than him. We can't get much more relatable than this. Overthinking about someone's perception of you clearly shows he cares a lot about how Annabeth perceives him, and he wants to impress her. This sound familiar? High school perchance? Unfortunately, to spoil the moment, Dr. Thorne, a manticore, ruins the dance and a chase scene initiates, leading to the meeting with the hunters, maidens of Artemis that follow her in the hunt. After this, Annabeth falls over a cliff on Dr. Thorne's back to Percy's dismay. And to make matters worse, Percy finds out that Annabeth had information about the hunters in her backpack, possibly thinking about joining them. This results in immense fear of losing Annabeth, since hunters may never date boys and instead remain immortal maidens. Further on in the quest, Percy meets with Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and she points out her appearance depends upon her viewer's lover. Can we guess how Percy describes her? That's right, she looks like Annabeth to him. I mean, at this point, we are being spoon-fed information that Percy really likes Annabeth at this point. She later discloses to him that Percy went on the quest mainly to save Annabeth, which he knows is true, and this really helps him self-reflect his feelings toward her. It doesn't help that Aphrodite also points out she has an invigorating love story planned for him either, and boy was she ever right. After this encounter, they arrive at Hoover Dam, and the architecture reminds Percy of Annabeth. Aww, he misses her and wishes that she could have been with them to admire the dam architecture. At this point, I'm a broken record, but I want to emphasize all the areas Percy struggles with her absence. Nearing the end of their quest, when they all battle on Mount Orthiers, Annabeth requests to swap places with Artemis, who holds the burden of the sky, but Percy, after seeing Annabeth's condition, chooses to carry the burden instead. This incredible act of selflessness powerfully highlights Percy's deep love for Annabeth that only uncontrollably grew from the thought of losing her. His action to sacrifice his comfort for hers, I mean, this might be the most romantic moment between them in the entire series that often goes overlooked. If we can overlook that later Annabeth expresses deep remorse for Luke falling off a cliff in the battle, as expected, Percy is pissed. After everything he went through for her, she still has feelings for the traitor, which deeply upsets him. After the Titans' defeat, all the heroes meet at Olympus, and their godly parents praise them. Zeus then requests someone to join the hunt for Artemis, and Percy flips out and tries to prevent Annabeth from joining the hunt. But we later find out that it was Talia Grace that desires to join instead of Annabeth. Percy feels complete and utter relief at this, and Annabeth asks him what he was trying to tell her, but he shrugs it off. We can only imagine the terrifying thought process of Percy, involving developing such an intimate connection with this girl only to lose her in the end. For Annabeth's perspective, I will be skipping it for this book since she is absent for most of it. My consensus for the third book is that Percy begins to value Annabeth over himself, a powerful showing of self-sacrificial love only found with people deeply invested in one another. Additionally, his overthinking and wanting to impress her shows his fear of rejection. Furthermore, his constant worry about her, even going so far as to disobey the camp and join the quest to save her, demonstrates his intense need and care for her. Lastly, his jealousy only keeps growing in parallel with his distaste toward Luke, reinforcing his possessiveness and need for her. In the Battle of the Labyrinth, we begin to see a complicated dynamic emerge between Annabeth and Luke, and Percy, Rachel, and even Calypso that causes confusion for our characters. Furthermore, we now see mutual jealousy, respectively, between Percy and Annabeth, with Percy's new friend Rachel and Annabeth still holding on to Luke. This begs the question, who wants who now? Starting off with Annabeth's perspective, as we skipped her last time, she plans to watch a movie with Percy after he finishes his orientation at his new school. However, these plans drastically change when she arrives at the school seeing Percy and his new friend Rachel escape from the burning school after being attacked by Ampausi, vampire ladies. Annabeth visibly shows jealousy and distaste toward Rachel, instantly leaving her in a sour mood for quite some time. She even pettily comments to Percy, "She's kinda cute," to which Percy responds that he never thought about it. To make matters worse, before Annabeth and Percy quickly leave to Camp Half-Blood for safety, Rachel writes her phone number on Percy's arm. To Annabeth, this is a major threat since before, Percy had no other girls interested in him. However, now that he has options, this makes Annabeth nervous, and she projects it with anger toward Percy. Also, I personally hate this scene. The movie date would have been so cute, but Rachel and the Ampausi just had to ruin it. It really sucks. I so wanted to see Annabeth and Percy together for the day, but I digress. Annabeth eventually cools down after making it to camp, and she even breaks the rules and slides over to Percy's table during dinner. While a small gesture, her breaking the social conforms at camp, especially with her seniority, really shows how much she values talking with Percy, and how it's difficult for her to stay mad at him. Later on, Annabeth struggles to deal with the pressures of her labyrinth quest, and scours through information about it inside her cabin. Percy finds her in this stressed position, and he too breaks rules by being in the cabin with her. The rules strictly forbid opposite genders, besides siblings, to be in the same cabin. After talking about the quest, the unbearable pressure on Annabeth causes her to break down in tears, and holds out her hands asking for a hug from Percy. Percy walks over and they hug for quite some time. As this is her first time leading a quest, she worries about her capabilities, to which Percy comforts and assures her. Deja vu, anyone? Remember in Sea of Monsters when they hug underwater? 2 times of emotional dependence and support from Percy cannot be taken for granted. Annabeth certainly treats Percy as her rock, a very common theme in romantic relationships, even though they are not official yet. Further on into the book, after quite some time in the labyrinth, Annabeth and Percy find themselves in Mount St. Helens, accomplishing a job for Hephaestus. When they are in danger from Telekines, Percy makes the decision to risk his own life for her safety, and she kisses him then leaves. I won't lie, when I was reading this, it caught me off guard, but I loved this cute scene. Not only do we see more sacrificial love from Percy, we see Annabeth's fear of losing Percy as well. This might possibly be the last time she ever sees him, so she chooses to have the best moment possible in that time frame by kissing him. When Percy finally returns back to camp, Annabeth hugs him so aggressively with puffy eyes from crying, since she almost burned his honorary shroud signifying his death. She realizes she is creating a scene, then steps back, but she undoubtedly is overfilled with joy knowing he survived the explosion at St. Helens. Percy quickly replaces her joy with once again jealousy after he hints that he was marooned on Calypso's island, a place that guaranteed love if Percy chose to stay. Annabeth disregards his choice of returning back to her and remains moody. Finally, at the end of the book, she chooses to disclose to Percy the final line of her prophecy from the quest, which says, "And lose a love to a fate worse than death." This, without a dash of uncertainty, confidently assures Percy of her residual feelings toward Luke. Annabeth feels split between liking Percy, but also feels guilty that she still likes Luke, explaining why she withheld this information for so long. She then quickly leaves Percy to think about this for the rest of the summer. In Percy's perspective of the book, we see him face complicated and conflicting emotions from various interests in the book, such as Rachel and Calypso, while also struggling with Annabeth's frustrating attachment toward Luke. Percy deals with Annabeth's moody attitude derived from her jealousy of Rachel throughout this book, which angers him since he believes it to be unfair. After all, Percy also has to deal with her, in his perspective, illogical feelings toward the traitor Luke as well. Despite these rough patches, Percy remains unable to hate Annabeth and comforts her throughout the book, which shows his commitment toward her. He definitely wants her. However, he struggles to find the correct time to express this. As mentioned earlier, after Annabeth spills the last line of the quest, Percy wants to tell her about how he feels, but Annabeth stomps off upset before he is able to. However, while unable to vocally express his feelings, we see in the book countless times of his love for her, that being his sacrifice in St. Helens and him hugging her after being stressed about the quest. My consensus for the 4th book is that they both love each other at this point, based on all their moments they share, but are unable to express their feelings to one another. Annabeth feels afraid of rejection since Percy may like Rachel and she still struggles with residual feelings toward Luke, and Percy likes Annabeth but can't find the right time to tell her, and he also feels undervalued from her connection with Luke. In the finale of the series, The Last Olympian, we see a very tense relation between Annabeth and Percy, where they both hold back how they feel from one another. However, despite this, we also begin to see more powerful mutual actions of love from both of them, finally suggesting a closure to their long, difficult love story. Starting with Annabeth's perspective, in the early chapters when Percy and her inspect the cabins at camp, she explodes at him and accuses that he runs away from things when he gets scared. Clearly, she feels annoyed that Percy hasn't expressed his feelings toward her since she struggles to do it herself. During the Battle of Kronos, Annabeth matches Percy's sacrificial nature when she protects him from a knife about to stab his Achilles spot. She ends up severely injured with poison in her arm. However, she slowly recovers. As Percy leans over her, she comments that he looks cute when he worries since his eyebrows furrow. I don't know about you, but when I read this, I noticed a complete change in Annabeth's character. Throughout the entire series, we see Annabeth teasing Percy as a way to show her interest. However, in this moment, she more directly and boldly points out she likes him, most likely due to the lingering emotional intensity of her saving him, but it still illustrates her getting more desperate for Percy to make a move and to feel comfortable around her. Also, and you might want to take this with a grain of salt due to its speculation, but Annabeth subconsciously knew that Percy was in peril danger when the knife was about to hit his Achilles spot, even though Percy never told her where it was. It's as if they share a soul link, especially after Percy's curious experiences with her in the River Styx. We'll get to that, but this might be an extrapolative theory. Now heading over to Percy's perspective, as I feel it's more valuable to cover the rest of the book in his view, I would like to publicly shame him for the first chapters. He kisses Rachel. Well, okay, she initiates it, but this is basically cheating. I don't care if his relationship with Annabeth isn't official yet. It felt so wrong for him to do this, and I'm just so salty. I am sorry. Rachel does end up becoming the Oracle later on in the book, which prevents any relationship between her and Percy, which Annabeth is exuberant about, of course, but I still can't get over how Percy hung out with her over the summer. Like, go get your real girl Annabeth, bro. What are you doing bumbling around with side chicks? It really shows Percy's insecurity and uncertainty toward Annabeth. He doesn't know if it's going to work out with her, so he has a backup. But anyway, I digress. Before the battle worsens, Nico convinces Percy he must bathe in the River Styx to achieve immortality on the battlefield, the only way to defeat Kronos. As Percy steps in the river, which tugs him down, he chooses for his mortal spot to be on his back. Percy, as a son of the sea god, finally experiences the terrifying feeling of drowning due to the River Styx's magical effect, and he feels trapped under its currents, slowly sucking away his life force. But then Percy sees Annabeth on the shore, and she calls to him saying, "Hold on, seaweed brain, you're not getting away from me that easily," and the magical cord connected to his mortal spot pulls him out of the river. While just a hallucination, this powerfully symbolizes that Percy views Annabeth as his most cherished connection to the living world. Her visualization reminds him that he lives for her. She gives reason for his life. This might be one of the most powerful moments in the entire book. We then see during the battle, Percy always offers to help or defend Annabeth, clearly expressing deep concern for her safety. He even saves her after she almost falls off a bridge. With the help of his friends, he pulls her up and they awkwardly untangle themselves after realizing their arms are around each other. In the final moments of the battle, Annabeth, Percy, and their friends attempt to finish off Kronos once and for all, but in a strange turn of events, Luke regains control of his body and stabs himself in his Achilles spot, killing Kronos and himself. In his last breaths, he asks Annabeth if she ever loved him, to which she replies that she only loved him like a brother. After Percy hears this, he finally feels secure in his love for Annabeth since she now understands that Luke manipulated her. After Luke's death, the gods decide how to reward the Half-Bloods for saving them, and Zeus offers Percy immortality. However, he looks at Annabeth and she shows fear, much similar to how Percy felt when he thought she would join the Hunters. With careful consideration, Percy romantically chooses Annabeth over immortality, as he feels a mortal life with her is better than an immortal life that eventually means he has to lose her. Another very powerful moment that suggests Percy values Annabeth more than anything in the entire world. When they finally return back to Camp Half-Blood, Annabeth surprises Percy with a homemade cupcake for his birthday, and they share it together. Percy then, as per usual, struggles to express his feelings toward her. However, Annabeth understands his intentions and grabs his neck to kiss him, finally beginning their official relationship. The campers, led by Clarice, find them and they carry Annabeth and Percy to a river and dump them in. But Percy, being the son of Poseidon, creates an air bubble for them and he chooses to not resurface, and instead they share the greatest underwater kiss of all time. The final book provides a very satisfying resolution for the complicated love triangle that slowly developed in previous books, from Annabeth's confusing feelings toward Luke to Percy's thought into Rachel. With Rachel being the Oracle, this prevents her from dating boys such as Percy, which helps Annabeth feel secure and confident with Percy. Furthermore, Annabeth now no longer feels guilty loving Percy since she comes to terms with her feeling about Luke being more brotherly than anything. Additionally, Percy's girl trouble resolves as well, and he has no jealousy for Luke anymore, eliminating any complications previously confusing him. Overall, these conclusions lead to Annabeth and Percy finally able to be comfortably together, bringing Aphrodite's planned love story for them to a close. For my final thoughts, I believe the relationship to be a gradual, passionate burn throughout the series, where Annabeth falls first in The Lightning Thief, and Percy follows suit in The Sea of Monsters after realizing how much he missed her over the summer. They then proceed to face various emotional obstacles in combination with confusing but intimate moments, like the teenagers they are, but in the end, their love for each other conquers everything. Thank you so much for watching to the end. It means so much to me as so much effort was put into this video. If you liked what you see, please support me and subscribe so you can see more videos just like this. Also, leave any suggestions in the comments for topics you want me to discuss in the next video. Catch y'all later.